I had a friend coming over and I decided to make an afternoon tea, a homemade afternoon tea. My plan originally was to go to the shop and buy some scones, some sweets, and maybe make some sandwiches, but I got carried over and eventually I make everything from scratch. And my lovely friend brought some macarons and kava. Some bubbles were necessary. Instead of making just sandwiches, I decided to make some canapes. This one is beetroot and goat cheese. It's probably the most simple one of all. I just peel raw beetroot. I didn't use cooked ones. And with a mandolin, I made very thin slices and some slices of goat cheese. I use French goat cheese. I think it's French. And some kind of seeds, and they have something else, those toast. I think they have dates as well. So it was quite sweet altogether. And I added some pickled red onion, and the key for this canapé is some grated horseradish. The result was fantastic. I also made the classic cheese and cucumber sandwich, but to spice it up a little bit, I added tomato chutney as the base in one of the sides of the bread and Kewpie mayonnaise on the other side. I love this mayonnaise. It's just the best mayonnaise ever. Very thin slices of cucumber and mature cheddar. I like mature cheddar. And this sandwich, it really works so well. It's refreshing, tasty, and the addition of the tomato chutney gives that umami taste that it needs. It's really good. And I use, probably this is not the best bread, but I like seeded bread, so it worked for me. But the star of the show was this salmon tostada, no doubt. I'm using raw salmon for this, definitely. I freeze it the night before, so it was frozen for 24 hours, to kill any parasite or bacteria. And also, it's easier to slice it when it's slightly frozen. So I cut it in small cubes, and then I use spring onions as well. I chop the white part of the spring onion very finely and mix it with the salmon. I left the greener part of the spring onion and slice it very thinly, just for the decoration later on. I added to the salmon some lime zest, soy sauce, sesame oil, and sriracha sauce. That's the key ingredient here. Mix it all well, and then I move to the other part because this is a salmon and avocado tostada. So I get ripe avocado, not too ripe, nowadays you can find terrible avocados out there, but this one was a nice one. And mash it nicely with a fork. Add lime juice, the same lime that I used for the salmon. Soy sauce, a little bit of coriander powder, a little bit of paprika, and salt and pepper. For the base, for the tostada, I use these corn and wheat wraps. I cut it in these small circles and toast them. And now it's time to assemble. Just a little bit of the avocado mix and the salmon cubes, and a little bit of the spring onion on top for decoration. There you go. Pretty, tasty, what else you want? And a small bite. Very refreshing. Really delicious. Yeah. Moving on to the sweets, first we have scones. This is the first time ever I bake scones, so bear with me. I follow Paul Hollywood recipe for my first time baking scones. I call it a success. There were some flaws, but altogether a good result. Just mixing the butter with the flour and adding the sugar and 2 eggs, and use the finger whiskers, the oldest of all our kitchen tools. Never fails. And mix it. I didn't use all the milk, the same as Paul Hollywood said. That is more about adding milk until you feel it's wet enough. But for scones, you don't want to knead a lot. Actually, it's more like just folding the dough several times, not kneading. You're not looking for developing the gluten here. the dough is ready, not as wet as it was at the beginning, and then roll it. I did got carried over with the rolling, and I rolled it a bit too much. It was supposed to be about 1 inch thick. I think I did like half of an inch, so the result was a rather skinny scones, but tasty nevertheless, so I'm happy altogether. Just cutting them with some scone cutting. This is not that, it's a ring that you actually can use for many different things. I also use it to cut the tostadas, so multi-use. And the key though is not to twist the ring when you're cutting, just push down and that's it, because apparently if you twist it, kind of seals the outside and then it won't grow as much in the oven. And then just a little bit of egg wash on top and ready. There it is, my skinny scones, but altogether a good result. Once I cut them open, I can see the inside is quite nice and moist, and it keeps the shape. So I kind of rather like this because it's not as big and thick as the scones are usually, so it's a lighter version of the scone if you want. And of course, I did buy the clotted cream and the jam. I even went as far as to make my own. And then it comes the cakes. I baked them the night before, so I left them ready. The first one is this banana bread mini cupcake. To make it is very simple. It's just like making any banana bread. Mash a couple of ripe bananas, mix it with brown sugar and 1 egg, and 1 cup of self-raising flour, half teaspoon of baking powder and salt, but also need some kind of fat, and in this case I use coconut oil. So here, once I mix everything, I realized that I didn't add the oil, so I added later on half a cup of coconut oil. I was like, oh no, I totally screwed this cake, but I didn't. It worked very well. And I just fill this cupcake tin. I think it's more like a Yorkshire pudding tin, I'm not sure, but anyway, I use it for these mini cupcakes and they look fantastic. I top them with some dark salted chocolate, which I just made melting dark chocolate with a little bit of butter and salt, and top it for decoration with some dry coconut flakes. Cute and tasty. Very tasty. Oh yeah. Look at my face. I'm even surprised that I managed to make something so delicious. Lastly, one of my favorite cakes ever is not well known. Is called sometimes as Armenian nutmeg cake. In other places I saw it as Iranian nutmeg cake. Anyway, it's very aromatic and delicious. It's very spicy. So to make it, you start with half a cup of self-raising flour and half a cup of strong flour or normal flour, a tablespoon of nutmeg. I also use a teaspoon of allspice and a teaspoon of ginger powder, half teaspoon of baking powder, and a cup of muscovado sugar. You need this sugar for this cake. The sugar is super important in this case. Try to mix all together with the flour. So we are mixing the dry ingredients first. You might need to use your hands, your fingers, because the muscovado sugar is very wet. And then we add the butter. Well, in this case it's vegan butter because I'm dairy intolerant, so I try not to use dairy on my cakes. I know I had a scones with clotted cream, but that was an exception. Then, similar that what we did with the scone, we need to mix with our fingers the butter with the dried ingredients until it becomes some kind of crumbs all together. At this point, we grease a tin and then add half of the mixture, but we reserve the other half, and then we spread it and press lightly, kind of creating like a base for this cake. And then we add more wet ingredients, like 3/4 of a cup of milk. I'm using almond milk here, a teaspoon of vinegar, a teaspoon of rose water, and half teaspoon of baking soda. We mix it together and add it to the half of the mixture that we reserved. I decided to make it vegan. I'm not sure why. If you're not making it vegan, at this point you can add an egg. It works in a vegan version perfectly, but it's a little bit more crumbly. And then I chop some pistachios just with the knife like this and add it on the top before getting the cake in the oven. 180 degrees fan for about half an hour until you get a toothpick and it's dry. Then I'm gonna add a glaze because this cake have to be very, very moist. That's the point. And very sweet, so that's why I'm adding a honey glaze. I'm mixing honey with a bit of water to make it runny, and then make holes with a toothpick on the cake and just add this honey glaze all over the cake to get it very, very moist. The last step is adding on top these rose petals. This is a very Middle Eastern style of cake. I'm also adding some more of the pistachio. And this is the result. It's this cute, brown, perfumed, aromatic, delicious, very sweet cake. Yes, that's how you feel when it hits your taste buds. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers, everyone. Bye.